Now turning to our roundtable, Doug Heye from the RNC and Heye Sevugan. I got it wrong in the intro. Sorry about that.
Well.
But you know, we're interested in accuracy here, so thanks for giving me another chance.
My name's the one that's always mispronounced, so
Doug
I really
Heye,
feel in a position of
it's
strength right now. Thank you.
But hi, Doug. Thanks for joining us. You heard some of our discussion just now with Jim. Let me just start with you because I frame this as it's pretty unsettling for the Democrats. What's your take on this, Doug?
We think it definitely is. Yeah, I've been in about 10 or 11 states over the past 3 weeks, and everywhere I've gone, we've seen that voter dissatisfaction is at a fever pitch. They don't like what this Congress has done, what this president has done. They don't like how it's been done, meaning how it's been implemented, how bills were passed. And they're angry and they want to change. And if you want to change Washington, the quickest way to do that is to fire Nancy Pelosi and retire Harry Reid.
Now, Harry, some of the more recent pollings, as Jim mentioned, suggested there had been a spike, at least at some point, for Democrats in that kind of pivotal enthusiasm gap. But that maybe is dissipated in this most recent polling.
I think
is this unsettling, or is this just
I think there's recent polling.
Stuff?
No, I think there's recent polling that shows that that enthusiasm has picked up on our side. If you look at the Newsweek poll that came out this week, or even the Rasmussen poll, which has us within 3, and it's Rasmussen. Washington Post shows us picking up 7 points this past month. And if you're looking at individual races, just this morning there's a race out of, or there's a poll out of Alaska that shows that our candidate Scott McAdam is pulled ahead of Joe Miller. In California, our candidates are decisively taking the lead. But beyond the polling, we're looking at the actual votes that are coming in. And looking at early votes as an indication of enthusiasm, what we're seeing is in 11 key states, California, Illinois, Ohio, Nevada, we are ahead. And we're ahead.
Whoa, but you're ahead in terms of people voting early.
And you would think that the most enthusiastic folks would be the ones that are out there voting early. If there is a
and
real enthusiasm
gap. Necessarily
gap,
voting for Democrats.
Democratic registrants are voting at a higher rate and in higher numbers in key states across the country. Now that, we can talk about polling with small sample sizes across the country, and there's a lot of volatility there, but in actual votes, Democrats are doing better. And I think what that shows is Republicans haven't closed the deal. They can't seal the deal because they're not offering the American people anything but more of the same and more obstruction.
Now, Doug, obviously some of the stuff in this poll does suggest that voters do remain optimistic about kind of the second part of the president's tenure in the White House. So there's some good news for Democrats in this poll. Let me ask you, though, about this early voting. Is that necessarily an arbiter of are these Democrats, can we be certain, are voting for the Democratic candidate? Because didn't Republicans get in some trouble a few years ago when you guys thought, oh, Republicans are turning out, and then they were turning out for Democrats?
It's also a reason never to believe exit polls. But, you know, Hari's right in mentioning some states where Democrats are ahead. But the reality is they are ahead by a much smaller margin than they were in 2008 when enthusiasm for the Obama campaign was off the charts. You take a state like Florida, where we really got shellacked by Democrats in 2008. We're up about 130,000 Republican versus Democrat votes of early voting. You take a state like North Carolina with a lot of enthusiasm, my home state, a lot of enthusiasm with college voters, with historically black colleges and universities, really driving early voting in 2008. We're neck and neck with them right now. And Republicans and Democrats go after early votes in a different way. Democrats tend to go after their base, the most excited voters on either side, where Republicans think that we tend to think that our base is a bit more reliable, and we try and go for those voters who don't have as high a propensity as normal.
Well, when you picked up the New York Times and saw that headline, you know, the Obama coalition seems to be fraying. I mean, what's your take on it? I mean, how'd you react to that?
I think
that has to be somewhat unsettling.
I think in the end, our base is going to come home.
But these are the coalition voters that maybe were the independents and the people in the middle.
Even within that New York Times poll, it showed that our base was doing fairly well. We're doing well with African Americans. We're doing well with Latinos. We're doing well with young voters. Other polling is showing that we're doing well across the board of our base. But let me just address very quickly something Doug said about our base versus some of these voters that wouldn't ordinarily come out in a midterm. If you look more closely at early vote numbers, just looking at the subset of these so-called sporadic voters who would ordinarily sit out a midterm, we're actually doing even better than we are overall with those voters in key states across the country. I think what that shows is that enthusiasm gap has been overstated. And that our on-the-ground operation is capturing our enthusiasm while theirs still seems to be in a state of disarray.
So are you suggesting that, you know, all the talk, I mean, all the polling, all the big kind of, you know, hand-wringing or celebration, depending on where you're coming from, about how Republicans are going to make significant headway next Tuesday and take over the House is completely overstated? Do you think Democrats are going to hold on to the House? I mean, what's your bottom line?
We feel very optimistic.
You're optimistic about?
Encouraging signs coming out of early vote, encouraging signs from what we're seeing in the field, encouraging signs what we're seeing in the polls in individual races, whether it's in California or Alaska or Nevada or Ohio. Things are tightening. They're trending our way. We feel like that will all climax on November 2nd, and we'll do very well.
But will you hold on to the House?
We think so.
We're confident that we're going to be in a position to win. We think we're at 38 seats. We need to get to 39. But Jim's story, I think, was demonstrated last night on The Daily Show that this Obama coalition is absolutely fractured. Well, we had Jon Stewart, who has been a real proponent of the president's in 2008 when he was a candidate, basically last night say, dude, where are the jobs? Well, and that's a question the president can't answer.
Look, I think if you're looking about a base that's fractured and a party that's fractured, look at the Republican Party. You have Karl Rove saying that the Tea Party is unsophisticated and Sarah Palin doesn't have the gravitas to lead. I think the Republican Party should look within themselves. They have third-party candidates across the country.
We don't have candidates who are shooting our legislation with guns.
But
we don't have candidates who are saying that I voted against Barack Obama 2 years ago. We don't have candidates who said I don't support Nancy Pelosi and I'll vote against her.
All right, guys.
Even though their first vote as a member of Congress in this cycle,
All right, guys. The voters will decide at the polls on Tuesday. But one thing I think we can all agree on here, if I can shift gears for a minute, since you did bring this up, the president made an appearance on Jon Stewart's show last night, and it seems like the one thing from just reading about it, I wasn't there, but from reading about it, he got pretty good reviews. But now people are turning on Jon Stewart and saying, what's with all the softballs from our the media's darling of television? We got a clip of that, so let's listen to it, okay?
So you wouldn't say you'd run this time as a pragmatist. You would not. It wouldn't be, yes, we can, given certain conditions.
No, I think what I would say is, yes, we can, but it is not. But it is not going to. It's not going to happen overnight. Eh?
So, what was your take on that? I mean, is this going to be effective with young voters? You're talking about the base is going to come out. Are these appearances good for the president?
I think the president answered very tough questions, and he's willing to talk to.
Oh, so they weren't. You're not even agreeing that Jon Stewart was asking softballs.
Certainly not. No.
There's just no common ground today. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think the president answered tough questions, and he's willing to talk to folks and across the board, across the spectrum, whether it's our base or others, which is a marked difference from what you're seeing from Republicans across the board. They're running away from the press. They're not willing to answer questions. We're seeing that in Ohio with their gubernatorial candidate. We're seeing that in Nevada with their senatorial candidate. We're seeing that in Alaska, where people are handcuffing reporters.
But last night we saw the president on Jon Stewart's show. What was your impression of his appearance, and does that make any difference at all? We've got a big rally coming up. Is that going to have any kind of?
It demonstrates the political problem that the president has in trying to appeal to these voters who are naturally Obama voters. But I looked at it and was sad that the president of the United States would go on just some comedy talk show to try and yuck it up. And for Republicans, it's not an issue of going on The Daily Show or The Tonight Show or The View or doing his brackets on ESPN. It's a question of doing the brackets on ESPN and The View and The Tonight Show and The Daily Show. I mean, thank God Baywatch is canceled. Otherwise,
but there is a precedent for obviously leading politicians going on some of those late night television shows. So I mean, I do feel like maybe that train has left the station.